Hello and welcome to the Sales Exchange podcast, B2B marketing talk for CEOs. When it comes to marketing, we can safely say that people haven't changed, but the technology certainly has. And if we don't adapt, we're going to run into some serious problems. So, if you're a CEO who's involved in marketing, join us as we talk about strategies and tactics needed to generate new business. And I'm your host and founder of Sales Exchange, Nigel Main. Well, welcome to another podcast. I'm joined today by Liz, of course.
Good morning.
And I'm joined by Dave Pitts.
Good morning.
And Graham Bunting.
Morning, Nigel. Nice to be here.
Great stuff. Quick intro here. Graham and Dave organise a variety of different things for reseller organisations and distributors and companies and so on around the UK. And we thought we should get together and have a chat and talk about how we help businesses develop what they're doing, especially with the different, I suppose the best way to put it is the different challenges that we're all faced today because of different technologies and digital and so on. And so I think the best thing really to kick this off is introduce yourself, guys, and tell us what you do so the listeners can get an understanding of what you can do for them.
Okay, so shall I start? Yeah. So Graham Bunting. We started at Trust Business Partners around about 3 years ago. And Dave and I have spent our entire working life working in technology, but working in technology in partnership with vendor and reseller channel. And so what we wanted to do was offer a service that helped the vendor connect with their customers in a better way, in a scalable way, and all that involved. In the last 3 years, we've had lots and lots of interesting experiences, and I guess we'll talk some of that today. But prior to that, working for very large global vendors, people like Avaya, and some, I suppose, less global players, people who were in the systems integrator space, companies like SEC and that sort of organisation.
Hi, Dave Pitts. So Graham and myself have known each other for about 30 years when we were knocking on doors, old style of marketing, but knocking on doors on rainy industrial estates around the Nottingham area. And we were selling into the deregulated telecoms market, selling telephone systems. We then migrated into bigger and better things, slight variances in careers as we went as well. But we've both sold on the street, but also sat in the boardroom. And it's 30 years experience that allows us to take it into our customers and work with our partners, to be able to share those experiences to understanding where the reseller is and where the reseller salespeople are.
Right. Okay. And what would you say there's a typical type of environment that you sell into? Not size of company, but type of environment in terms of what are the companies doing that would make them want to get involved with Trust Partners?
So I guess there's probably two strands to that. Ultimately, there are existing vendors who are developing product lines and portfolio, perhaps to an existing channel. And as technology evolves, that channel evolves too. And sometimes they need help with that channel enablement piece. So they decide what it is they want to do and what they need to do. And then getting the channel to understand, adopt, and then start changing behaviours can be quite challenging.
Yeah. And
of course, the other element is new vendors, whether they're UK-based or international, wanting to develop a business, a sales business, if you will, in this marketplace. So that's UK and rest of EMEA. And we would help them to establish a platform. So that would typically be through distribution and resellers.
Yeah, yeah. I suppose that, I mean, I know how the channel works in the UK, but then it's quite vast. But I suppose anybody from the outside trying to get into it, it's a long process. If you want to go and do it, you've got to start from scratch.
I think our typical customer is sitting there going, I'm really not quite sure what to do, whether I should do it, how much money I should put behind it, what's my return on investment. And That could be an external vendor from, say, the US that's thinking about coming into Europe. What do I do? Do I go and recruit 2 or 3 people, take an office, provide all the services before I've got any revenue?
Yeah.
And that's going to cost me $500,000 to $1 million to do that. Or do I use variable cost, which is what we are, that allows us to connect with the right channels, the go-to-market models, the nuances of localization, because something that comes in from another country is not necessarily the words, the phrasing, the messages that would be necessary for the UK or maybe France or Germany, and fine-tuning that on a variable cost model so that there's revenue to then backfill into a bricks and mortar organisation that then can scale.
Yeah.
Probably worth adding for our listener that this is very much B2B. So we know an awful lot of businesses build a presence on the internet, and their customers come to the internet, they find what they want, they buy it, and then they get it shipped. So this is not what we're talking about. We're talking about very much B2B engagement, where oftentimes the client knows what his problem is, but doesn't necessarily know how to fix it, so what the solution looks like. So a lot of the reseller partners that we'll introduce the vendor to will be those people that have a very broad understanding of technology and where that technology fits in the stack that end user customer is going to buy into to give them the solution to the problem that they understand, if that makes sense.
So also at a people level, some of that is about helping and coaching those leaders, whether that could be a small reseller business or a medium distributor, or maybe even the lead in a vendor, around, because it's a very lonely place out there. You're leading a business. Where do you go? How do you bounce ideas off the wall? Who have you got to go there? Who's been there? We both run businesses. We both understand the challenges and the loneliness. And it's about sometimes just affirmation that, we're doing the right things. Yes, if we keep banging our heads against the right brick walls, we'll eventually get through the hurdles that we've got to go through. So it's working with people as opposed to channelizing product sets and go to market, but also with the people to make sure they've got their global strategies right.
Are there any typical challenges? Are there any kind of common challenges that these businesses face, whether they're distribution based or whether they're reseller based? Are there any commonalities there that you've noticed that
I think
there
are some. I guess the first thing that comes to mind for me is if you're a non-UK based vendor, I think the one thing that we certainly understand from a channel perspective is whilst they are always looking for new technologies to go and help their customers with, they do appreciate a local flavour to it. So, having somebody in the same time zone, somebody who talks the same sort of colloquialisms as they do, they might sound like small things, but actually they're really big things. I know that, if I've got a problem with anything in the engagement, having somebody local is always preferable to having to wait until the office wakes up at 5, 6, 7 hours into the day because my customer's screaming at me and I need to get it resolved. So I think those kind of things are probably where we can add significant value. And I guess there are lots and lots of vendors who are very technology based, so they understand their product, their solution, what it's designed to fit, but they're not necessarily as well versed in how that engagement looks like. Getting that sort of channel readiness piece that Dave spoke about in his address a little earlier.
So I think the common problem in new startup and generally around the software place is people understanding the 2 different messages that they need to take to market. Okay, so I'll go through indirect because of the distribution because I don't need to go and employ a load of salespeople. Okay, but you have 2 different stories that need to go to 2 different types of client. So there's the channel. What's in it for me? Why should I do this? Why should I invest my time? And there's the proposition to the customer as to how is this going to help my business? How's it going to accelerate it, make it easier to do business with me, etc.
Because I think your end user, you're absolutely right, needs a different message. I know from my experience working in the telecoms industry and being a product distributor, if you like, but we still had different routes. So distribution, reseller, and end user, meant that messaging had to be very different. And I think the hardest nut to crack for me was always the reseller channel, because the reseller channel go, well, if I don't sell your kit, I can sell somebody else's kit. What are you offering with that's different? What, and there's a lot of factors there. It's what margin am I going to get? How much effort do I have to put in to get something out of it? What are you going to do to support me? Because I think all those things come into play, especially with the reseller channel.
It's absolutely, how can you make that journey easy for me? If it's a like for like, then what's the reason to change? It could be margin, but actually the margin becomes irrelevant to the cost of change and retraining all my people, etc. Sometimes it's I need another vendor, but I mean, in a lot of cases, you're waiting around for the other vendor to mess up, to get a foot in the door.
And you always have
there.
that favoured vendor, don't you? You always have that unless they want something a bit kind of left field or that is too pricey for them, you always have something else in your back pocket. You go, well, okay, we can do this. We don't really want to do this because we've got all our resource going this way, but we can do it. So
yeah, and also the interesting conversations we have with people are around. We get people come to us and say, "So can you get me into one of the big distributors, please?" And we go, "What do you do? Why do you do it?" "Well, we're a new startup. We've got this great software product. It makes a difference. It's got a great message." Okay, if you go into a large distributor, you're just going to get left in the noise. You haven't got the brand, you haven't got the volumes, you haven't got the revenues. You're not going to get any interest.
It's just going to be a picture in the catalogue, aren't you?
Exactly. Absolutely. So let's suggest we go and look and work with some other people that are smaller, that are looking at new niche technologies, are trying to do the change piece, and going out and evangelizing about it in a different way. It's maybe not a product, but it's about being part of a change in, say, the workplace. So the workplace is changing dramatically around, physically how we are, how we work, how people work, how they feel about it. The new generations coming in. Where's the Wi-Fi? Where's my iPad? And away I go.
It's that whole digital transformation.
It's the digital transformation. So there are smaller distributors, smaller vendors, smaller distributors and resellers that are really focusing on that broader story and moving up the chain of customer, where you're having a big picture discussion as opposed to a technology discussion. And then you become part of that overall solution. And what we found we've been doing over the last few years is bringing multiple technologies together to create that story, through people that want to enter into the UK or want to grow. So it's an interesting dynamic, as opposed to looking at just what I call broadlining distribution. If you've got a brand, if you've got a presence and a global marketing budget, yep, go for it.
Because often, even if you've got a brand that's really successful in territory, in their own country, doesn't necessarily translate itself into a new territory. It doesn't matter where that new territory is, but it doesn't automatically go, well, just because you're successable here doesn't mean you're going to be successful there, because that market is
it's a little bit Dragon's Den-ish, on a bigger scale.
Yeah.
So I've got this great product. We developed it. It's super. It does loads of stuff. I've asked all my friends and family, and they've bought one.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. So, great. You've sold it in Germany. You're a German company. You know lots of people. You've used the leverage and your credentials to be able to start a business and scale it quickly. Mm-hmm. But moving into another territory is two different things.
Yeah, totally.
You don't know anybody.
And it's a lot of a difference between fulfillment and selling, or selling and marketing. So, you might, if you're a well-known brand, it's often more about fulfillment. People are buying the product and the service and somebody has to fulfill it. This is a very different game. So we're talking about unknown businesses who kind of understand what their customers might look like, but reaching those customers is really important. And it's a sales and marketing job. They've got to invest. Things don't just happen. This notion of build it and they will come is a complete fallacy.
Yeah, I mean, we've done an amount of research on stuff like this, even saying about they've sold it to their friends and family and so on. And people will immediately go, oh, yeah, I get that. And then you correlate that with, look at the statistics on businesses that start and fail. Same thing, the same arc on that graph that goes up, and you sell to everybody and it plateaus and it drops off, you go bust. You go, oh, what happened there? And we kind of look at this. You have your the reseller type market, distribution type market, and we kind of look at marketing kind of in a broader sense,
more holistically,
and seeing what's actually happening within that. And the businesses that you connect with, they have invested a lot of skin in this game, and they want it to work. They don't really want to afford for it to fail. But the same as probably any other SME in the UK, they don't want their businesses to fail either. But there's this change, and you're saying about workplace change and using iPad. Here's my iPad, here's my Wi-Fi. Where is it and why haven't I got it? The same thing applies within marketing and business owners. They're saying, well, why isn't the marketing working? And so I think the story out there's changed, and we talk about digital transformation, but the digitization of marketing and working, a lot of stuff's going on out there, but there's too many people trying to flog that dead horse of a 1950s style sales model. That we can say that, we're allowed to say that because we've done all that. We've done the door knocking in the snow and the sleet and the shoe leather. And so having looked at that transition and what is changing and why it's changing, I can see why trust partners would be so essential for businesses. Because what's the point in hemorrhaging loads of cash on a whim? It does become on a whim if you haven't got any inside knowledge, and you just wouldn't do that. We were saying a little while ago about cold calling, the classic, you telesales cold calling. That was one-to-one focused marketing. You want to call it that? Yeah. Because you had a database, you knew the person's name, you knew what they did, the type of company, the position, and you phoned up when you wanted to make an appointment with them. And then you go and scattergun approach and hemorrhage loads of cash in marketing. You say, what happened?
Sending an email is not cold calling.
No. And LinkedIn's the new cold calling platform for everybody. So it's like, and you get the response back like, why haven't you responded to my message from LinkedIn? Ignore. I wrote to you yesterday and you still ignored me. Why are you ignoring me? How dare you ignore me? It's like, wow. Where'd that come from?
Yeah. But what's interesting is the converse of that is a lot of businesses I see are not addressing that to their customers.
Yeah.
So, I'm phoning you today about the email that I sent last week, following up also the WhatsApp that I sent yesterday, and I've had no response.
Yeah.
But I only deal with email. Well, that's not good enough. You've got to be able to combine this. This is where the technologies and the people issues, understanding how your customer wants to buy today is a very new thing for a lot of businesses to get their head around.
I think it's really it makes me smile sitting here because there's four of us have done all the door knocking and the cold calling and the telesales and everything else and got to this point now, attempting to convince people that it doesn't work. It's changed. And they go, what do you know?
Well, I'd actually say that still knocking on doors, I think still works. It may not be effective and cost effective, but I still think because it's a little bit different. It doesn't scale. It's a little bit, if you send a letter now, you're probably more likely to get a response than an email. Yeah. Because it's outside of the box.
It's like, oh, wow.
Likewise, somebody knocking on the door with a cup of cup of coffee for the receptionist who now is warm to you, that's going to give you the information that you need, is probably a clever way of starting to market it. Yeah. But it doesn't scale anymore in comparison.
And the trouble is, she is the gatekeeper of all the knowledge, and then you ring up, and then you've got to get through the other gatekeeper who then still won't give you the person's name or any further details.
Well, part of the I think the change is around the buyer's journey. So the buying journey has changed dramatically. We have Google, we have a buyer that is able to access all sorts of information about all markets, about all products, thought leadership around that particular topic, who's doing what, who's branding well, who's in the market, who's not. And I think that and we do it ourselves. We do it ourselves. So, we go onto Amazon and we go and do some research, and we find out who's good, who's not, what the reviews are. We do it for holidays, TripAdvisor. Where should we go? Where shouldn't we? And business to business is becoming more and more that way as well, I think.
Yeah.
And so when you are contacted by a buyer and it's moving towards them contacting you as opposed to you contacting them, you've got to have positioned yourself. You've got to position yourself in some thought leadership. You've got to position yourself in that we're broad, we're open, we understand your problems, we understand the technologies that solve those problems, and we're a personable business with a reputable brand, with integrity that we want to deal with you. So how do you get all that across? Basically across the internet.
Yeah. So it's time, isn't it? It's a time issue, and not that it segues into anything that we're doing at all, but
I mean, I read an article a little while ago, and it said that 60% of the buying decision is made before you even are aware of it. So I think you've got you have to be aware of that, and I think the problem is as a supplier of anything, and we know this from working in telecoms, we kind of park that. When we walk into our offices, we become the salesperson. But if we want to buy something, you're absolutely right. We'll go and get a review. We'll look on TripAdvisor. But we just seem to park that when we think we're going to promote our own businesses. We think that it now becomes transactional, because what I want is I want you to talk to me. I'm going to interrupt you in your day and find out if you're looking to buy, just say, a phone system or some new software. They go, well, no, I'm not. And even if I was, I probably wouldn't tell you, because I'm not far enough along that journey to make a decision about whether I want to do business with you or not. I mean, typically you say, give me your web address. I'll have a look at your website, because they want to do the research in their own time, out of hours, because they've got access to that information. And I think as a seller, you have to appreciate that we lose that, we forget that when we walk into our office.
This is the whole channel readiness piece, where how do you give the reseller salespeople the tools to help that process, get connecting with the buying journey? And so it's having a platform of tools, PDFs, videos. It's not just a web link.
No.
I can. You're looking at workplace. You're looking at moving into a new property. Okay, I can send you some white papers on that.
Yeah.
Which then starts to trigger that actually you may be worth talking to.
Yeah, it starts that relationship, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
And brand is really about reputation, as opposed to, it's not just a pretty logo. It's about reputation, and how do you build that reputation before you even get introduced to that potential buyer? You build it by producing the content, by making sure you become, first and foremost, have you got trusted information? Can I trust the information that I'm reading about you? Are you giving it to me free? Are you willing to share that information with me so that I can make a decision one way or the other? And if you offer that information, you very much guide that buyer towards you, rather than saying, I've got to keep it really tight and close to my chest because I'm giving away information. But if you're not going to give it away, somebody else will, and you'll build that relationship, and you're actually building that relationship before they even make contact with you. And I think you have to take that view. You have to take a long view with that.
The thing is, you go back to about 2008-ish. That's when, for example, Marketo came onto the scene. So you've got the marketing automation platforms coming in their current style, guise, format, and so on. Prior to that, it was just all about email. So then the automation came out, and that said that, well, what you can do is you know who's actually been on your website. As soon as they give you an email address, you know their inside leg measurement. And so the automation platforms were made were put out as if they were that's all you needed. You didn't need anything else. But the automation manufacturers, the software manufacturers, were pandering to the KPIs that were being demanded by the directors, because they were working on the basis that this is how I got business in the past. I did the cold calling. This is how I got to where I am today. by grafting, by cold calling, and by getting compliment slips and knowing who to speak to. And you're going to automate it. Oh, happy days. So they go and hemorrhage a load of cash on automation platforms and just become a sophisticated spammer.
Correct. And it's the all you need to do is buy my CRM and you'll be successful, because you put the data in and we've got the analytics that tell you how many calls people have made and what they're actually. No.
They're not the golden goose. I mean, I think this is where, and we've all been there. It's like, Marketo wasn't the golden goose in the same way that the IP office wasn't the golden goose. These were just tools that enabled you to do your jobs. They didn't do the jobs for you. You actually had to use that tool that you had to,
Absolutely. But that's changing in terms of, the younger generation get it. So I do some work with schools around careers, and the 15-year-olds are starting to get it's about personal brand. So they're starting to go, our advice is, yes, go and open a LinkedIn account. So that you can start to build a personal brand around your business, what you've been doing, what work experience you've got, so that when you do get to, your university application, then but they also understand it by the number of retractions that are done by people in the public around the tweet, the erroneous tweet that they made. So it is all about this personal brand. And once it becomes personal brand, well, a product is a personal brand. So you now need to make that socialised in the same way, so that it connects with you and me as something that is tangible, has integrity, has value. Yeah. And I think that's where quite a few people are falling down now around, you're right, we're just going to tell people it's great. Well, no, but they need to be told from 20 other sources how it's great. To verify your conversation. It's
a big problem out there. I mean, I think with people using your organisation, you can buy an accountant, no problem, not under the table. You can buy an accountant, you can buy an HR person, you can buy any type of resource you want, but you cannot buy a sale. It's impossible. Because you have to go out there and convince someone that your product is better than another, and then you've got the educational, so the consultative sale, whatever you want to call it. But you can't buy a person to go and do that. You can just fingers crossed and hope for the best. So the mechanism that is available to everybody is to create this backstory of everything that you're about, who your staff are, how you work, how you function, how you change people's business environments, and so on and so on. And you create that to make that available to anybody that wants to look at you. I mean, Seth Godin, in his book, This is Marketing, I think it's that one, basically said, you can sell to people like you. That's it. Are you like them? Are they like you? Do you want to sell to them? Do you not want to sell to them? And that's it. We want to sell to people like us because they get it. We don't want to sell. I mean, you can do it geographically. We don't want to sell in Scotland because we've got no one to support Scotland. So if you're not going to sell in Scotland, then you're going to sell a bit closer to home. And like the cold calling telesales guy, he's going to phone someone he knows where they are, what they've got, why he's calling them, and so on and so on. And it comes to the whole reputational brand thing, is to have this backstory that has depth to it. They can click in whenever they want. It's a 24/7, 365 days a year ability to communicate your message, and a salesman can't do that ever. And if you're prepared, like we've got some cameras up here, and we'll record this and so on. But the point is that if everybody has acknowledged that we've moved along and that things have changed, what's the answer? What's it supposed to be? And if the people you're connected with, they have to communicate a message. They're going through you to communicate the message. You're telling them you need to communicate it to a broader audience, and it needs the PDFs and the downloads and the information and white papers. That is all content, and it needs to be created, not necessarily curated, because that's just something for social, but you've got to have your armory, your library of content. That means that people can dip in and find and search and get anything that they want. And we've having seen so many businesses go bang, because they've chosen not to go down that route. I saw a thing in two things. One was in Elite magazine, and the other one was in Forbes magazine. And Forbes magazine said, "Oh, you can start a company, any number of people. Look at Instagram. How, half a dozen people flog it for $1 billion." And Elite magazine said, 25% of businesses expect to go out of business in 5 years' time. That's just on late payment stuff alone. And it's like, wow. So there's a lot of negativity out there as to almost why not to go into business, but it doesn't stop entrepreneurs doing it, finding a niche and an area that they want to go and attack. But it's today it's being prepared. It's having that stuff done in advance. Like, for example, you've got a product, go and do AdSense, go and do a Google pay-per-click ad that relates specifically to your product. Chuck it up, see what happens. No clicks, don't do it. It's the cheapest way of doing it. You're not going to pay for a click unless someone clicks on it.
Absolutely.
And it sends them to a landing page with a picture or an advert or whatever, and away you go. And you can build on that. But people don't want to do that. It's like, no. I'm an entrepreneur. This time next year, Rodney, And it's and that's what causes a lot of the problems.
Well, I think there's two sides. One is transactional products that can be bought off the page.
Yeah.
But generally the type of products and solutions we're working with, they're still about people. Mm. So people buy from people. The old adage, but it's still true.
Absolutely.
But how you connect with those people and how they feel comfortable with you has changed. Mm. So back in the day, in the mid-'80s, selling packaging materials around the East End, it was I went and found the warehouse manager and we stood outside the warehouse and had a cigarette together and a chat, connecting with people.
Yeah.
I can't do that today.
Yeah.
It's a very different business model. But I can go in and get them to understand who I am by lots of different social as well.
Oh,
so things like the podcast.
Because he's a managing director now, so now
well, absolutely.
and he recognises you.
People about buy from people, right?
Yeah.
But it's that personal brand. What's on LinkedIn? What's it say about you? What messages are you putting out? Things like this, a podcast. What kind of messages are you putting out? Is there something tangible and interesting somebody wants to listen to? And again, I remember somebody that they'd done all their accountancy exams, they'd worked in a partnership for 10 years, they eventually got their partnership and they paid their money in to buy their partnership, and then 3 months after they'd done that, they were rolled into the senior partner and got an absolute rollicking. Why? Because they didn't realise that they were just another self-employed salesperson that had to go out and find new accounts.
Yeah.
It didn't come to them.
Yeah.
The whole point of being a partner was your network.
Yeah.
And networking and getting out. And they learned.
Yeah.
And they started going outside their comfort zone because it wasn't natural to them.
Yeah.
I'm an accountant, not a salesperson. Yeah. But actually, we all have to do this in any sphere of life.
100%. 100%. Anyone in business is a salesman. Every single person. And the people that think that they're not, that's where it starts going wrong. And I think I see so many times that the directors that succeeded, that set up their businesses, that then turn around and say, I'm a director because I did it this way. I have succeeded, therefore you can't tell me how to succeed. The market may have changed, but you can't tell me what to do now. So someone comes along with a new idea or a new methodology based on whatever. The managing director can veto it because he's the managing director. That's not even talking about external people internally. They might have great ideas, but they will get vetoed because I don't want to do it. It's as simple as that. And what I say go, and I pay your salary, so get on with it.
So I think what people lose is this thing about failure. So I think in the UK very much we're taught not to fail.
Yeah.
And some of the stuff I do in schools is going in and telling 15-year-olds to start to fail.
Yeah.
And the teachers look at me and go, yeah, we teach people to be successful. Start teaching them to fail.
Yeah, fail
and
fast.
What I call it is successfully failing.
Yeah.
Right? Continually successfully failing. Because every time you successfully fail, you've learned something. You've now adapted. You've moved to the market or whatever's happening within that sphere that you're failing in. And failure isn't failure. It's not a negative. It's a positive.
Yeah.
It's something that, we all have to try something new.
Well,
Sitting around with microphones.
You can't develop unless something doesn't work. I mean, failure is a word. It didn't work. I tried that. It didn't work. Some people call that failure. Some people say it just didn't work. Try something different. And it's having that positive outlook on it.
Yeah, it's how you look at it. It's the old adage of it's not what happens to you that counts. It's how you respond to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, there is too much bad stuff going on out there that doesn't support change. Stay as you are. You mustn't change. You mustn't upset the apple cart.
I think the other thing salespeople have shied away from, but as you mature, you get to the point of you can ask the hard questions, is understanding why somebody's in business.
Yeah.
And what they're trying to achieve. Yeah. So, if I'm a reseller and I'm going to try and sell this within the next 18 months, then your likelihood of change and risk is low, right?
Yeah.
If it's, I've got another 15, 20 years, I know that I've got to change and adapt to the new marketplace, I'm investing some money and some funds to do it.
Yeah.
Okay, we're talking about some more leading edge technologies and software, then they're probably the people that you want to be working with. We would do the same with vendors.
Yeah.
You ask the question, what's your objective? And then you re-ask it because what you're told is probably a little bit of a lie. We've seen too many people, it's all about the share price.
Yeah.
Especially quoted companies.
Yeah. Yeah.
AIM or NASDAQ, the CEO's all about the share price because that's the game they're playing.
Yeah.
Actually,
it's sad because they sold their companies and they sold out, or they're the CEO, but they now work for the shareholders.
And quite often
you've gone from running it to now you're an employee.
Yeah, and now you're beholden to that. So it's about share price value.
Yeah.
Whereas we forget it's about customer value. It's about customer value. Everything is about, and I still love, Richard Branson in terms of, it's about looking after my customers. If I look after my people, they'll look after my customers.
Yeah, look after you. And he said, I think it's about looking after your staff first.
Absolutely.
Every time. Go
Culture,
after your staff first.
Environment. And that, again, this workplace thing is where it's changing dramatically.
Yeah.
And one of the, I guess from a technology perspective, one of the biggest challenges for any systems integrator, reseller, is to go into somewhere like a large law firm in London, so 500 people maybe, and you have everybody in the spectrum there. You have maybe the senior partner that I have seen has never sent an email because they have a PA that sends an email and they haven't gone through adaptation and change.
Yeah.
To the law grad that, we're sat in University of Hertfordshire Law School at the moment, who comes out and it is about the iPad, the Wi-Fi, the technology piece and going and connecting. But there's a load of people in between within that organisation as well. And you have to provide for all of those people. It's not.
A lot of it. I suppose a lot of it comes down to cost as well. And lots of people like to shy away from cost, meaning it's a good excuse. It's a good thing to use as an objection. But when you've got that, I've got a stat on one of our web pages that shows that the average income per person per annum is about 80, 90 grand, up to about $1 million. And then it pushes up to about 130 grand, and then up to about 160 grand when you get to about 5+ million. So call it 100 grand per person per annum, give or take. That's crap. That's really bad. There's a company called Peak Design, and they make camera bags. $1.46 million per person per annum. Well, wait a second, that's manufacturing. How can that be? Google, $1.2 million per person per annum. They're $1 trillion company. And then we talked about Instagram before, about flogging to Facebook for $1 billion or whatever. I can't remember what figure it was, but lots of zeros. And so it's looking at what's going on out there, what has to be done to keep the people, and to keep the people you need the numbers, but you also need the environment, which is workplace. And you can't get the right people without the right environment. And if you have got the right environment, then you've got to have the mechanism and the calculator on that finance to make the business viable long term anyway. Because if you want to give them all the toys and goodies and the basketball hoops in the offices and this, that, and if you want to give them all that and the slides and what have you, you've got to be doing it. You've got to be knocking out some business. And then if you want to knock out the business, how do you get your business? It all comes back down to how do you get your business? You can have anything you like.
But I think that what's changed is you can hire all that. So, you don't necessarily have to own a building or an offices. You can go on a short-term lease that's into something that's a little bit more funky than traditional office.
Oh, yeah. But you can't buy a sale. And getting the right person, you might be able to hire the office, but you've got to have the company ethos behind it that means that person's going to be attracted to you to work for you and stay. And if you've not got the business coming in that directly or indirectly affects them, whether if the salesperson isn't banging it and making it really happen, that person who's got the nice iPad and Wi-Fi is going to be out the door.
Yeah, and we come back round to filling the gaps, the tools. So, if you take a sales team of 10, say, for instance, you have 2, 3 that are really good performers. You have 2 or 3 at the bottom end that are on their way in or on their way out, and you have some people in the middle.
Yeah.
It's how do you get those people in the middle into the top performing bracket, percentile. And what you generally find is that the performers have understood how to navigate to the information, the people, the tools that they need to connect with their customers. The people in the middle are struggling, but doing a little bit, and the people at the bottom haven't got a clue because they haven't been trained or they didn't listen.
Yeah.
And if the easier way that you can provide those tools, the more likely the sales to quota are going to move upwards.
And it also, I think, it takes away that excuse, doesn't it? Because the workforce is got an expectation about now when you go into a business, you expect to have a phone and a laptop, and you expect to have like the CRM and all that stuff available. It's not just a few index cards with some names on. So you have an expectation, and I think if you can remove that excuse of that what's expected, then you say, well, you have all the tools. So you said this the other day when you set everything up in your office, so they had everything when they joined you and you were selling telecoms. You'd remove that excuse, don't you? And you say, actually, we're going to remove all of those obstacles, those objections that the sales team are going to come up with, and even if you've got some good marketing in place, you've removed that objection, because if a salesperson comes in and say, I've got nothing, you've got no collateral, there's nothing on the internet, you don't even have a website. How am I expected to sell this stuff if you don't have any of this? So I think removing those obstacles, and like you were saying with the businesses you're working with, they've got to understand that, you've got to remove those things and make it that journey easier, not for the salesperson and for the customer, because they're kind of run side by side.
Well, the least friction, the easier the journey,
of course.
Right? And actually, I feel like it comes back to companies acquiring other companies, and how do you get the new people? So there's 2 ways you do it. You can leave it 2 years and you're running under your own brand, or you can do what Cisco do very well, which is the day you are taken over, there is a Cisco laptop, there is a Cisco business card, there is a Cisco brand over the door. You are now that business.
Yeah.
You have all the tools, you have access to the internet, you are now that business.
Yeah.
And that's what this is about, is going, you are now part of this, you embed yourself into it, and you've got all access to all the information that you need without any excuse to go and do the job.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's good. So what's your next plan? What's your next thing on the horizon?
So
got several projects. Some are on the cusp of about to be launched. So we've got some very interesting technology in the contact center AI space.
All right.
More on this soon. Little tease.
Watch this space.
Absolutely. So it's a 4-year-old startup. But it's still very much a startup, and we're looking to help bring that into the UK and European market, and that again will be a channel play. So I guess there'll be a number of vendors that we'll want to work with as well. That's really cool technology. We've got some other really cool technology, which is it's very hard to describe. It's sometimes the technology is very visual. It's about the experience rather than waxing lyrical and with prose. But fundamentally, what it does is it enables people to be connected to the right resources or people wherever they are at the time they need access. So imagine, if you will, you walk into a meeting space, and we've all experienced this, right? You walk into a meeting space, you book the meeting room, there's a telly on the wall, there's a camera, and maybe some audio technology, a load of wires.
And nothing works.
Yeah, well, if you're lucky, there might be a piece of paper on the wall that shows you where, slot A into tab B. And invariably, that's a horrible experience for you. So this technology helps take all the bumps out of that and gives people the ability to have access to the resources they need to make that a better experience, whether that's a person or whether that's information. And there's lots of different use cases around that. I think we'll be seeing some of that at ISE next week. So the Integrated Systems Europe. So it's the big AV conference in the RAI in Amsterdam. So hopefully we'll get some customers looking at that as well.
But making this smooth enough is things like using what we all have. So we all have a phone. Yeah. So, putting a QR code that then your phone can read, because we've all got one, that then, you just say, point your phone here. Yeah. Well, that's quite a simple instruction. And that takes your phone off to the appropriate information, whether that be a landing point with a set of videos that shows you how to do something, or whether that is a person that can now talk you through, because guess what? You've got a camera on that as well. So you can now show that remote person exactly what your problem is. And it's using those simple technologies in a simple way, because this is all about simplification. Any of this is simple messages to simple business or complex business problems, but simple solutions. And that's why the technology is so good, because you can simplify it. Likewise, in the contact center space, it's about how easy it is to configure things. As a medium-sized business, how do you deal with these multiple channels of interactivity with your customers and make it easy to change and adapt to them? Do I need somebody that costs me, $1,000 a day to come and do it, or can I train one of my people and they can just do it ad hoc? And that's this simplicity thing again, just back to how do I make it easy to do business with people?
It's all about the experience, right? So, this customer experience. So the AI technology in the contact center space that we're getting involved with, rather than talk about the technology, let's talk about the problem and how it solves the problem. So, you call into your bank, for example, or you start on a web chat. And I guess it depends what your age group is as to how you might start that interaction. So you start the interaction, you go onto a web chat, it's probably quite delayed, and you end up getting to the stage where they have to escalate to a phone call or something like that, or your internet connection drops, and then you have to go back in and you start all over again. All really, really annoying experiences. What this technology enables is, first of all, it enables persistent chat. So if you do have a disconnect on the internet, you get back exactly where you started from. So there's that persistence to the engagement. But also when that escalates to another medium, so it might be a call, you've not got to go through the whole process of explaining who you are and what's going on again, because that information stays with your engagement. So those things sound very simple, but there are very few organizations that are doing that. And as a result, they're frustrating the hell out of their customers. And guess what? People vote with their feet. They just say, I'll go somewhere else because this is too hard.
It is about customer experience, isn't it? And I think it's understanding that the interaction, again, starts well before. And actually, it starts here kind of with the marketing, but then it goes around every area of the business. So it doesn't matter whether it's the sales process or the finance process or the support process. You want them to get to a point where they say, working with this company is great, even when I have a problem, because actually the problems can be the catalysts for actually showing how you are and how you operate as a company, because we see them as opportunities rather than seeing them as real big headaches, because you can prove to people how you actually handle them. And it doesn't, the problem can be major, but if you deal with it in a way that says, we're aware of your problem, you keep in touch and all that. Whereas the companies that even the littlest problems, you can't get any feedback. Nobody's talking to me, or like you said about the time difference. I need to know now. I expect a 24-hour response. You know, I've been dealing with a company recently. It's driving me crackers because they're based in the US and they say 24 hours before you get a result. But actually that 24 hours is longer than that. That 24 hours is actually 30 hours, which is a day and a half for me, and working time. You know, we're talking, I make, not a complaint, but I make a query on Monday. I might not get an answer till Wednesday afternoon. That's no good to me because I wanted the answer Monday afternoon, not, you know. So I think there's the expectation there. And I think, you know, accepting that the customer is, you know, I know it's a bit of a cliche, but the customer is king. And I think sometimes companies forget that. And even more so now, because like you said about them voting with their feet, you know, they can read all the reviews and that's great. But if they have a bad experience, equally, they can put a really unkind review about your company that you could have dealt with in a much better way.
Yeah, it's how you respond to that feedback from the customer. There is no failure, only feedback, right? And if you get feedback that says the experience that your customers are having isn't what you think it is or what it ought to be, so you have a responsibility within your business to go and look at that and make it what it needs to be, because that's customer affecting. And if you're affecting your customer in that way, you're not going to grow your business with them.
No.
And I think we're starting to see some research that sort of says within the next 2 to 3 years, customer experience will override price. It's, you know, I'm happy to pay 10% more because I know that if I have a problem, you know, the John Lewis effect, I'll walk in, they'll say, yes, we'll sort it out for you. There's another one. Get on and enjoy whatever you bought, sir. Is a very and Amazon as well is a very different experience, and that's starting to be the benchmark.
I mean, the whole digital transformation thing is, yes, there's a technology element to it, and there's business process management element to it. So using something that can adapt your existing legacy software, but the digital transformation thing is about people. That's it. It's just about people, whether they're customers or whether they're staff. It's irrelevant. It's what's their experience with your organisation as a business. And is it a good one? And is it one that's replicable and visible and identifiable? If you can do all that, it's great. Happy days. Carry on. People will keep coming back to you. And what winds me up to an extent is when you get certain marketing companies go, no, it's digital marketing transformation. No, it's not. A lot of rubbish. It's just, you're just trying to get in on a buzzword, because the marketing people are not creating or presenting information that would actually move the needle anywhere. So the technology people are getting in saying digital transformation is about people and customers and servicing them. And the marketing people are on the periphery trying to say, but what about us? We're doing this. And then they're not doing anything because they're not creating. The content comes back to that thing again about look at us. You can look at us. You can investigate us and analyze who and what we're about to see if you like us. And so, you know, this whole thing about the way that businesses work and interact and how they start. And I mean, it's a bit like, in a way, as a question, how do people get involved with you? How do they connect with you? How do they start a journey with you? What's been your experience so far? Because we're talking about people and customers.
Yeah, and quite often it's come back to people we know, people we network with. We've been around quite a while, but we also, as a business and individuals, I guess we call ourselves givers. We're quite happy to share information, help people along the way. And in one way, we've helped a lot of people along the way and not taken anything for it over the last 30 years. Hence, actually, the consultancy business that we do, which says, can we monetize this? But because of that, I think we come with a certain integrity and reputation that says, well, you know, we will do the right thing, and we'll tell you it, and we're pretty straight. And it's so a lot of it has come through word of mouth, but also about us going out there and talking to people, exhibitions, shows, whereby you're looking for new technologies, you're looking for the people that have got the challenges, and going and starting conversations. Actually, going door knocking. I mean, it's walking onto a stand and start, what are you trying to do? What are you trying to achieve? How are you going to get there? How are you going to scale? Don't know all those answers. Okay, well, once the show's finished, let's come and have a conversation about
And
it.
do you find people are quite open to those kinds of conversations when you
I think if you pitch it at the right level, so it could be something like that, but you need to be talking to the owner or senior person, or our own personal experiences is through other people that we interact with. So I've done some coaching with somebody that I play tennis with. Because she's running a business with 16 people, that's quite a lonely place. How am I going to grow my team? How do I change the culture? What about me? Graham's done similar with another business, a reseller business. How are they going to change and adapt to this digital market? And how are they going to go again in effect? So sometimes it's just personal connections whereby you're talking the same language. We've run businesses, we've had the same problems. We talk to lots of people that have the same problems. They're not unique, but they always feel unique.
Oh, yeah.
and you have to make
It
them
only
feel
happens
unique
to me,
as
it's
well.
only me, It's like, no, it's not.
Yeah.
None of us has all the answers, I think, is the bottom line. And it's a great strength for people to be able to reach out to others to say, I need some help. It's not always easy, but actually it's finding the right people. And I think we might have said it early on here. If people know what you're about, they know, like, and trust you, they're more likely to come and be open and ask for help. And it's okay to ask for help.
Yeah.
Sometimes it doesn't have to cost you anything. Sometimes if it's more involved and you need a project, you might need to think about how you invest in that particular project. But yeah, I mean, there's plenty of help out there.
Well, that's what I mean. We kind of took a stance that marketing's marketing. Everyone's a marketer. Everyone's a marketing genius. So therefore, we've got a lot of competition because everybody in business is a brilliant marketer.
Including the business owners.
No, that's what I mean.
Widgets, yes.
Them, absolutely. I mean, without
I know
showing.
lots about widgets.
Yeah.
But we kind of got to a point where we thought, well, we have to present this. We've got a different approach and so on. And so if we explain our approach in as much detail as we possibly can and make it completely available, completely free, none of this hiding it behind a curtain, download it. We don't want your email address. Just take it. And if it works for you, great, let us know. But here are the solutions. It could potentially take a while. And if you want to fast track it, call us and we'll do it for you. Simple. But there's the answer because people, it's a lonely place out there. And, if you've got different people, I wouldn't say misleading directors, but not telling them what they should hear because they're fearful of something, then we're the same way you are. You're talking to people that own the business because it's a lonely place. We're saying, listen, guys, this is what you need to know about marketing. Why should you know about marketing? Because you've been spent all these years doing what you're doing as a professional X, Y, or Z. Your marketing person has got a degree in marketing, but he ain't telling you what you want because you keep firing him every 18 months, according to the press, for the past 5 years. So there's a lot of negative stuff out there, and I kind of see what we're doing, as two companies, providing a level of service that isn't really available out there. I mean, there's not many people out there that would do what we're doing to say, we'll talk.
There's too many people out there with, I can do this overnight.
Yeah.
And there is no overnight.
There's no 10,000 hours.
Well, the buyer often wants to hear that, though, doesn't he? The CEO wants to know that you can get them a result this afternoon or tomorrow. The reality is it's a long game and it's going to take you a while.
It took me 15 years to become an overnight
Absolutely,
success.
yeah.
It's a step-by-step journey, and you have to take the first step on that journey.
Yeah.
And that's what we do, is helping people take that first step on their journey into maybe coming into the UK or going down a different route through channels. Or, it's about that first step and then being able to accelerate the steps as you go. But it will not happen over. It's not a 3 month, it's not a 6 month. It's an 18 months to 3 year commitment to go down into a new territory, into a new customer set.
Yeah.
And it's not an easy decision.
Well, if you went to any consultant in terms of the finances of the business, so we're quite comfortable doing the sales and marketing stuff, between us. But you look at the finance side, and the finance person, the management accountant, whoever would say, so what's your 5-year plan? Where do you expect to be in 5 years' time? So he can say it. He can say it to the business owner, But when it comes to sales and marketing, well, you can't say it because I want to know this afternoon. Are you going to move the needle by the end of the week? Or are you going to close it in, are we going to be firing on all cylinders next month? But you've got a 5-year plan.
I remember being phoned up by the CEO at 11 o'clock at night with a conversation that went something like I'd sent him a forecast for the next 6 months. And the conversation was something like, "You've really upset me. I've just come back from the opera. These numbers aren't real." I'm afraid they are, because that's what I'm being straight with the resources we've got. That's the forecast. Well, they're not good enough. They need to be better. Okay, you're paying me.
Yeah.
I will go and make that spreadsheet sing to what you want to hear.
And in 6 months' time.
What a waste of time.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I mean, I had a very similar thing. I found out that I have to be careful that an employed or an appointed CEO was falsifying figures on Salesforce in order to spew out the forecasted figures to give to the main investor.
To keep his job.
I left. Yeah, just it's too much.
But I think,
ridiculous.
I think we need to have that degree of honesty. And I think, I think my biggest sale that I ever had took me about 2 years. And then I just I had a chance conversation about, well, how are you paying for your phone system right now? Oh, we've got a Monarch and we rent it. And it was like that in the old, and you were music to our ears, wasn't it? It was like, but the thing was, I've been speaking to him for 2 years, but either I'd not qualified him properly or we'd just not got that far, or I don't know. But I think the thing is, we know that you have to be in it for the long term. Very rarely do you land on something where somebody's ready to buy right now. Because even when you think they're ready to buy right now, there are other forces at play that you have nothing about. The CEO may change, or somebody in purchasing may change, and they've got their own loyalties and allegiances elsewhere. And I think unless you're willing to, you say, well, actually, okay, I have to accept that. I have to roll with that. We'll have to start all over again. And, I don't know whether you've ever done tenders before, but it's like you read a tender and you go, well, we can pitch for it. But actually, they've already made a decision, because you can tell from the way it's written that they've already made a decision. But you're going through those, you have to jump through those hoops, because eventually you might actually...
Well, it's an interesting one, because I was working for a large corporate and went in to run the pre-sales organisation. And day one, I no bid. And it was, well, you can't. We're this big organisation with this big brand, and we have to bid. No, but you don't know the customer. You have no relationships with the customer. That you've told me the tender is written around our competitors, and you now want to spend the next 3 weeks with 3 people filling out paper. No.
What a waste of time.
What a waste of time.
Yeah.
Right? We've qualified this. It's a waste of time. So we're saying no.
Yeah. There's a bit of vanity that goes with that as well, doesn't it? It's like, we have to do that, because this is who we are. And it's like, well, no, actually.
Well, it comes back to being busy fools,
Yeah.
which is what a lot of people are. It's focus.
Yeah.
Where am I going to focus my time, my people, my energy,
Yeah.
my money?
Yeah.
And getting it focused and aligned with that.
Yeah. And actually being prepared to say, even if you put that focus in, there was they're quite a well-known manufacturer of drinks products, and they were hugely successful in the UK. And they said, right, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to now go to the Netherlands, because we think that's a great market for us, the Netherlands. What they completely misjudged was the fact that in the UK, people will have breakfast on the go. So their drink really suited the breakfast on the go people, and they could put it in the likes of pret-a-manger and eat, and it was a great product. Went to the Netherlands, they had it in a little shop, next to Amsterdam station. It could hardly shift any. It was like, well, why is it? Because in the Netherlands, they sit down and eat breakfast before they go to work. And it was like, why didn't we know this? But they put a huge amount of effort, and then even had a manufacturing plant, just a small one, but they'd invested all that, but there was something quite fundamental and they couldn't work out why they were, because it was hugely successful here, but not there. And then they pulled it all back and said, actually, before we export any more product, we're going to do... I mean, IKEA do exactly the same thing. We watched a programme about IKEA a few months ago, and they were deciding whether or not to open an IKEA in Mumbai, I think it was,
in
wasn't
India.
it?
Yeah.
Now, the woman lived, she was an English, or maybe she was probably Swedish, but she lived in Mumbai for 3 years. So they relocated her, she lived there, she would go and talk to people, she talked to their target market, but just as a, she would walk through the markets and like, is there a market for this? 3 years she was there before they even spec'd out a location or any of that. And it was like, you think, blimey, having somebody there for 3 years. But actually the cost of relocating somebody for 3 years to Mumbai made perfect commercial sense, because they weren't going to go into a territory that they knew nothing about. They didn't know if they had a market. They're hugely successful over here, but is it the right market for us? And it was actually, I think they worked out it probably was the right market, but they were willing to spend that. And I think, if you look at those models of those big companies that say, actually, we can do that. We can, I mean, not everybody's got that luxury, but the point, it's the whole thing of, are we willing to wait and find out, or do we just want to put everything into this now and employ 25 salespeople, but we don't actually know if this market's the right market for us?
No, absolutely. And that's, Trust Business Partners is all about that integral knowledge of the market, the culture, and what you have today as a product, or will it sell in the UK? Will it sell in Europe? Again, you're quite right. I mean, mainline continental Europe is very different to the UK in terms of quite a lot of cultures, what we do, etc. I worked in France for 9 months and rapidly learnt that, you shake somebody's hand because you haven't seen them today. We all would, back in the 90s, would go and everything was done around the coffee machine and a cigarette around the coffee machine. Very different cultures as to how you're going to do business and what the buying trends are and how people will adopt and adapt to new technologies. You might have the greatest thing, but if you've got a staid market, you will not sell that product.
No.
You have to wait 5 years.
Yeah, because you have to break that culture, don't you?
You've got to, the curve of change has got to catch up. So, you may be better coming into the UK initially and then maybe going to Scandinavia. Scandinavia seems to be a much more open market to new technologies, change, adaptation, and then you may then start to look at the traditional markets of the Germany and France before you. You've got to get that change curve going at the right time. And just because you've got the greatest product or service doesn't necessarily mean that the market's ready for you.
Because there's resistance, isn't there? And you look at, you say about Scandinavia as well, and I think that's because the Scandinavians speak a lot of English, as do the Dutch. But who would you rather do business with? The Dutch, that can be quite forthright and very straight down, or would you rather do business with the Scandinavians, because actually they all can communicate quite easily with one another? They, Swedish and Danish and Norwegian are all very close language, so they don't really have those language barriers, but they also speak really good English. So you don't have that language barrier to it. Whereas in, you try and sell something into France, and years ago I sold playground equipment. I used to think 22 miles across the channel, but a world apart in terms of culture. They are completely different, and they don't want to speak English to you. So you have to have somebody who can speak French and speak it fluently, because otherwise they will use that to their advantage against you. I mean, that was the way it was. It might have changed, but it is very...
My experience 20 years ago is exactly the same.
Yeah, and it's quite different. So I think, looking at the different markets, the different territories, you have to change. Sometimes you have to change a culture or break into that culture and do it with baby steps, than thinking, I've got this great product, it will suit everybody. Yeah, it might suit everybody, but not everybody's ready for it. Not everybody's was ready for a smartphone.
There's even more subtle things like, I would imagine an American business person would have a real problem with one of the experiences I had, which was I was sat in an office in Copenhagen in Denmark, and at 4:00 the MD stood up and said, "Right, I need to go now. I need to go and collect my children. I'm finished for the day. Our meeting's finished." Now, I got that culturally. But to somebody where their culture is 24/7, you do everything you need to do, they're worlds apart. So you've got to be able to work with the cultures as not just it's people and people, right? Somebody that actually gets that, or is prepared to go into a new territory and with an open mind and observe and listen and learn, as opposed to, no, this is the way that we do it. This is the only way we do it. You are going to change your ways to how we do it.
Yeah.
Doesn't work.
No.
I think there's a real class act in a way in terms of trust, in that trust partners, that is, in that your feet on the street. There's the you go to PwC. You will not get feet on the street. You won't go to any of the large firms. You're not going to get feet on the street. People that actually know and can tell you the temperature of what's going on out there. The larger firms will tell you what you want to hear, and give you a timescale and a cost appropriately. Whereas if you've got someone that's actually on the street and actually has the direct personal relationships, then you can explain and develop and come up with what could be presented as a very accurate plan and illustration of what's potentially going to happen and why and the timing. But you go to a big firm, any big firm, and it's like,
you'll get a 50-page strategy document with no real operationalisation of it. You'll probably get a 2 to 3 page strategy document with 2 to 3 pages of how we operationalise that, how you make that work, along with a couple of pages around, what's that market research been, what are the differences, and maybe what you need to adapt and change, some of the marketing messages, etc. So that's much more around making stuff happen. And as a new startup, entrepreneurial businesses, that's what they need. They don't need a PwC type 50-page report.
The thing is, they can be a 15-year-old company, but they're coming over here, they're still a startup.
Absolutely.
If they're starting from scratch, you're still a startup. It doesn't matter what what you've got over there.
Nobody knows you.
Yeah, nobody's.
And they don't have the resources.
No.
And certainly don't have the local resources.
No. And I think that's for businesses. I mean, what I was saying before about it. It pains me to see so many companies go bust. It pains me to see businesses go through hemorrhaging money because they've been given bad advice, whether it's marketing advice, sales advice, or startup advice. And it's all avoidable if people know who to speak to and who to get through to and connect with. And a 20-minute conversation with someone can save you a lot, whether it's time or money. It doesn't matter what it is. It can save you an absolute fortune. I love doing what I'm doing. I know you two do as well. But
it's great being involved in, the nuances of a business and why something's successful, but or not. But also being on this slightly ahead of the curve of technology and how the world's changing, really, and thinking about those things and how somebody can communicate those messages and go and evangelise about it. The evangelising of this message has to be tied back into real life sales.
Yeah.
We can spend a lot of time evangelising and having a great story, but we've got to back that up with some money somewhere along the line. Not just evangelising a new technology set. So it's got to have real world application. And make a difference to its customers.
Brilliant.
I think the great thing that keeps us all in this are my 3 favourite words: things have changed. And they continue to change. And actually, I think it's the pace of change now that's catching a lot of us on the hop. I think one of the things we spoke about is the way people are now choosing to buy their services and products. We don't need people to come and tell us what it is anymore. Not always true. But actually, people do their research. For a lot of the people that we might get involved with, the challenge for them is beginning to articulate how they deliver value and why people should want to engage with them. Because it's not necessarily immediately obvious what problems they're solving. Sometimes they solve so many problems, they might forget to focus down on a niche to get started. If you do all things to all people,
you become nothing to nobody.
Exactly, it's a very difficult message.
And
that can be hard.
In an ideal world, we start off with a blank piece of paper and we put a circle in the middle and we go, why? Simon Sinek, why? Why are you here? Why are you in business? And then build out from there, because quite often, technology business, we write code, we've created a product. Great, but why? oh, because we had this idea 5 years ago and we had this particular scenario and then it worked out here and we thought we'd find a solution because lots of other people might have it. Okay, well, now we're finding out the why, and that's part of that communication process is around why we're here to serve you as a customer. And a lot of people get lost in the bits and bytes and the zeros and ones to, we've got this product and it does this. Yeah, but why? Why does it do it?
Why should anybody care?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's getting that passion and story across. And I remember LG, Lucky Gold Star.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And I remember Gold Star coming into, it was Gold Star then, not LG, coming into the UK to sell their first telephone system. And the dealer manager coming in and saying, I've got this great new system. You've never heard of the name, but let me tell you the story. Yeah. Back in...
Long time ago.
1990, something like that, maybe earlier. And it was, this is a $400 million business today. Yeah. We own oil platforms, we own the plastics factories, we own the circuit boards, and we make this. And by Christmas, you'll see VHS recorders, TVs in Dixons and Currys. And this brand is going to be a global brand. This is why you should buy into selling these systems. And it was a great story to go out to customers with. But it had the story of the passion and the longevity. It wasn't just something new. Yeah. And that's creating that story is the key, I think.
And I think then you've got creating that and then actually delivering that story. You've got to be able to deliver that story to your potential customers and to the people out there. Because I think once you've got the why, it's like, right, so you've got the why, so how are we going to do it? How are we going to take it from here to here so that your market knows who you are and that you've got this story to tell? Because people love stories. We said before about the About Us page. People love to know what people do and, they love to know the background. And I think that's part of the storytelling. And if you say, well, actually, it came out of this, the reason I'm doing this now is because of this little situation that happened here, and I saw a niche and I thought, wow, that's amazing. And people like to hear those stories, but you have to be able to communicate those stories. So it has to be, how do we get that message out there? How do you actually communicate that to the people that you actually want to sell to? And do we do it in, like producing videos, or do we talk about it? Do we get it out there? Do we do press releases? And do that first before you take on a raft of salespeople, because you still have to have a story to tell. And going into a customer saying, I've got this great product, and say, well, I don't know who you are, but so what? It
really, really frightens me in that I see 20-something salespeople pick up a handset and start to show to a customer that the red light turns green, and that they should be buying IP. Well, the red light turned green in 1985 when I was doing it, and it didn't. It still changed, right? And I could still make a phone call. Yeah. So what's the difference? Yeah. Right. It's not about IP. No. It's about how does your business work today, and is there any benefit in that red light turning green?
Yeah, it's the feature attribute benefit in FAB, and it's always been there. Absolutely. It never changed.
But unfortunately, people are now just selling.
Why are you not buying it? Buy my product. Why aren't you buying it? As you're told.
Yeah, but look,
I've phoned you 10 times.
Price and features, no.
Well, there's a lot of businesses that will still recruit people, and then we spoke about this earlier, didn't we? They come, they get a laptop, they get a phone, and that's it. So nobody tells them what their job is really and how to do it and what's available, and then they're not provided with any training. I think when I came into the telecoms industry, people told us what a pair of wires were, how it connected to a TJF, and all this sort of stuff. So we understood what it was we were delivering. I think training is an element that is missing still today, and it's one of the first things that it's a bit like marketing, really. What do people do when things get tough? Where do they cut the cost? Training and marketing, perhaps. The two areas they should probably double down on.
Yeah, for sure.
I think, I kind of look at it. Obviously, I've got a massively vested interest, but content and information and how you communicate it. But the real significance of, as I see marketing, and I can't put you in a sales box because it's advisory, because you're saying, don't make these mistakes, go down this path, don't make these mistakes. Correct. And so, it's kind of called marketing, but it's to do with attraction. It's trying to attract people to what you've created. You set out your stall, you want to attract people to what you've created. And if that's called marketing, well, that's so unfortunate, because it's actually business management. It's the two things that we're doing is advising a business how to structure itself before it gets into trouble. And the damage the bad marketers and the bad salespeople have done is iced certain people out, that you say, well, yeah, you can do what you like. Come back to us when you're feeling the pinch, and we can step in there, and we step in and go, here's the solution, this is how it needs to be, and it's not going to happen overnight. And we're talking about 5 years time, and we're going to do X, Y, and Z. So you do plan to be in business in 5 years time. So therefore, what's the plan? What's the, do you want to exit in 5 years time? It's fine, but what's the plan to stay in business for the next 5 years? And I think that and people listening, if you're in business or going to go into business, you've got to start on the right foot. It costs nothing. You haven't invested any money yet. You haven't spent a penny. Find out. Speak to us. Listen to what we've got to say. Look at our websites. Just get involved in a conversation, because it will save you just a lifetime.
It's detail. So even we're talking about sales and marketing, but the other piece about it is, so what happens when we get an order?
Oh, that's another podcast.
I know. I will let that hang, because a reseller partner, if that experience is bad, guess what? You ain't going to be getting this anymore.
Well, I reckon. I mean, we've been having a good old chat here for an hour and a half. I think what we'll do, we'll call this part 1.
I think so.
And then we'll do one about systemization, automation, and actually delivery and fulfillment.
Okay.
And I think on that note, because we've got it, we've got to have the music, the outgoing music. But listen, it's been a real pleasure. It's been really good.
Very good.
Thank you.
Would anyone really know that this was like the first group podcast we've done?
No. We'll soon find out.
We're going to find out.
There is no failure, only feedback.
Absolutely right. Well, listen, really, really good to talk, guys, and we will definitely do it again.
Thank you.
That's
Great stuff. Bye for now.